Captain, incoming message.
It was the dawn of the third age of mankind. Groovy.
Hi-ho. This is me, Kermit the Frog.
Hello there.
Moopsy.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Not a great plan.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Let's see what's out there. Engage.
Hey there, we're those sci-fi guys, and this is Those Sci-Fi Guys show. Just two working dudes, different lives, different jobs, but a whole lot of love for science fiction and the fun that comes with. We are your hosts. I am P.S. McKay, and I lost my window of opportunity to buy a beach house when they were affordable 30 years before I was born.
And I'm DT Cavman. And I the main reason why I think I'm going to be buried in the Bourne National Cemetery is just so I can afford a place on the Cape.
Yeah, it's kind of getting to that point, isn't it?
It's in my will.
Yeah.
It's where I
good.
get to be buried.
Yeah, I want them to spread my ashes in the haunted mansion of Disneyland. But that's
you
me.
You can haunt
that's
your
my
own
kink.
mansion. Or you could haunt another mansion. Just
I could.
go on somebody's, just die on somebody's property and haunt them.
Yeah, but that requires like some more forethought than anything. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to be thinking about when I'm going to die. I'm just gonna, when it happens, it happens. So, and let's get macabre, everybody. So before we get started, I just wanted to give a special plug tonight. A new podcast has come out titled Dawn to Darkness, hosted by Annie and Caroline. Join them every other week as they explore the darkness and the criminal. Their tagline is, do your friends think you're weird because you're obsessed with true crime or because you want to talk about... I'm doing a favor here, man.
I know.
Or because you want to talk about how horrifying online dating really is, then you're in the right place. Welcome back to Drawn to Darkness, where horror and true crime get cozy. And it's a bi-weekly podcast.
I don't know how long your plug is going on.
I was just finishing it up. It comes out every other week. The first 3 episodes are up and live. I couldn't stop listening. I burned through those, within an hour and a half. And I was actually disappointed that I didn't have any more. So I look forward to the next one. Annie, Caroline, keep up the great work and the fantastic job. Go check it out. Apple Podcasts, wherever you can get your podcasts and whatnot. And enjoy the darkness.
Cool. I'll have to check them out. Thank you for bringing it up. We've definitely had a chance to get to listen to and even talk to other podcasters and YouTubers. So that's really cool. And I'll have to check it out. Are they only on Apple Music or are they on anything else?
Just Apple at this point, as far as I can tell. Sure. I'll want to, touch base with them a little bit later, but it looks like them getting their feet wet is a very bright future for them. So I'm really excited. It's fantastic. I mean, it's the exact sound. When you hear a project that someone is working on, it sounds exactly like what they were going for, and you didn't even know what they were going for. That's what this project is, and it
sounds familiar.
So,
it sounds
not
very
sure what
familiar.
You're talking about. So anyway, yeah. So hats off. And how are you doing, DT?
I'm good. At the midweek point, and it's kind of busy coming up into the weekend, as it always becomes.
Always.
But before we kind of skip to our topic, I'd like to point out we lost a couple of people today, actually. The first and probably the biggest name that passed on was Brian Wilson.
Yes.
Of the Beach Boys. Legendary songwriter, kind of musical genius, subject of a Bare Naked Ladies song.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Let me see about this. There's a wonderful tribute that was done about 15 years ago. We can play a little bit of it. I'd like to. I actually took that loss of Brian Wilson pretty hard. Please continue. Sorry.
Last year, the Beach Boys were the subject of one of those Disney Plus documentaries, along with the Jim Henson one and the John Williams one. But the Beach Boys were one of them.
That's right. So BBC did a little tribute to Boys here. Have you seen this?
No,
it's good. I'm assuming you can hear it though, right?
Sure.
It's very pretty.
Pharrell?
Yep.
Hey, Elton.
Lord?
God only knows what I'd be without you.
Yeah. Anyway, I can't play too much more than that. But it was a wonderful tribute. Just take a look. God only knows BBC Music. The BBC did a little tribute. Wonderful.
To the Beach Boys.
Yeah, to the Beach Boys. It was, and considering that it's probably history's greatest love song, all being said and done. So I don't know. Are there any others that you think? 1,000 Years probably is a really good one too, though.
There's others. Fools Rush In.
That's a good one. Yeah, I can't fight that one.
There's plenty. So
I can't fight this feeling. I just because of the way I worded earlier, but anyway, yes, Brian Wilson, great loss. First CD, it was the first CD I ever bought. Made in USA by the Beach Boys.
Nice.
Yeah, it was like a bunch of their hits and stuff. So, thank you, Brian, for the wonderful memories.
Very much so. And we also lost somebody who has strong sci-fi cred, including one of the best acting performances from early Deep Space Nine. Harris Yulin passed away today. He played Gul Durheel or Amon Maritza, actually, in Duet in Deep Space Nine's first season. A truly standout episode, powerhouse acting. The Cardassian underling who changed himself to look like a Cardassian war criminal.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because he was so guilt-ridden over the occupation that he couldn't do more. Did he help the Bajorans during his time, or did he just silently watch the carnage?
I believe it was silently watching, which was the guilt. And he was just like a clerk for this Gull who was known as a butcher. And so he had himself surgically altered to look like this guy, and basically wanted the Bajorans to put him on trial for war crimes. And it was very powerful.
Yeah,
it was a very early standout episode of Deep Space Nine in its first season. Usually on
definitely one of those.
Best.
definitely one of the early pearls to show the depth of what they could do and what they were going to pull off. That's for sure.
One of the first times you actually see Kira start to have any sort of sympathy or empathy at all with a Cardassian.
Yeah, that's true. You started to see depth on Kira's behalf.
Yep.
He wasn't just a hard ass.
Harris Yulin was one of those character actors who was in a lot of, he played a lot of dirt bags and whatnot over the years, or hard asses, westerns, crime movies. Was well known as playing the judge who was trying to convict the Ghostbusters in Ghostbusters 2.
That was him?
That was him, yeah.
Oh my gosh,
he had
the Fratelli brothers. Or whatever the brothers.
The Scoleri brothers.
The Scoleri, thank you.
I gave him the chair.
Fratelli was on my mind because Goonies anniversary just came and went. So,
yeah.
But yeah,
not as old as I.
Chair.
He has this very weathered look, and he always has. So I guess I thought he was older, and that maybe he'd passed on. But he was in such big movies as Scarface and Clear and Present Danger, and The Hurricane, Training Day. But just one of those guys who had this kind of great, kind of like deep, voice and whatnot. How he didn't win an Emmy for his role on Deep Space Nine is beyond me. He was also in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was the dink who was in charge of the Watchers Council and fires Giles at one point.
I
he's
don't
got
know what
some.
that means, but that's okay.
all it does is strengthen his cred for this podcast.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. So, we are taking a little bit of a detour today. So if you want to just take us out and take us into it as you take a swig from your Dell's Hard Lemonade.
It is not a hard lemonade. It is a shandy, which is a mix. It's a lemonade and beer mix, which is I didn't think I would like, and now I'm rather hooked. It's delicious.
Sorry, I didn't mean to presume.
Yes, well, it is what it is. But yes, we are taking a bit of a left turn. As you might recall that this winter we did a review, another departure of the TV show Office Joe, which is partially produced by the American Legion. Well, as we're all quite aware, DT Cavman here is a proud U.S. Army veteran, actually a retiree. And this year marks the 250th birthday of the United States Army. Well, it's the 250th for many things. The start of the American Revolution, which we just had in April with the 250th celebration of Lexington and Concord. It was fascinating. The things you could see on TV. You couldn't even drive into Lexington or Concord. In fact, the National Park Service put out a video saying, take the train, walk, bike, but don't drive. We don't have enough parking. Yeah,
that's right. I forgot you did say that.
And what you could see on the news coverage was fantastic. Drill and ceremony of colonial militia in Lexington Green. A reenactment with the fighting between the Patriots and the Redcoats, and an actual demonstration of drill and ceremony. Marching, facing maneuvers by the U.S. Army drill team, replete in their dress uniforms and with the rifles, with the bayonets, excellent. That being said, this for you non-history buffs, when the American Revolution started in 1775, we still hadn't declared our independence. That came a year later after the country, after the colonies had already generally been at war for a year. The United States Army traces its root to the formation of the Continental Army, and its birthday is June 14th, 1775. And this year is the 250th birthday of the United States Army. It's also the 250th anniversary of both the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps. So feel free to take that as you will. The three oldest services. That being said, the United States Army is the oldest and largest service. In fact, I put out a message that I hope to get in my company's newsletter that comes out every week about that. As the head of our military and veteran working group, I hope that my message would have come out. But yes, it is. It's very important to me, of course, and for those people who listen who aren't very familiar with the military, when a U.S. military service every year, they always there's always a birthday celebration. The U.S. Army, we typically have, since it's June, large formation runs. Your units fall in and they run on the post, and a lot of cheering and shouting and running by senior officers and families and whatnot. And there's usually a bunch of kind of neat events around it. And another thing that they always do is there's always a cake. And in grand tradition, the cake is usually cut by a saber or bayonet or dagger or something, held concurrently by the soldier, the oldest soldier in the unit and the youngest soldier in the unit. So we've had it's a kind of a symbol, which has always been a lot of fun to see. And I if I don't have cake on June 14th, I twitch a little, to be honest with you. Or around June 14th.
Right. Which is also Flag Day.
It is Flag Day.
Which I have to chastise my public school upbringing, because I remember being taught about Flag Day, but I don't remember that being told it commemorated the birthday of the U.S. Army or military services, for that matter. The first three.
Yeah, they don't teach that stuff in school. I mean, and that
seems insane. I mean, it's important.
It does. Every service does something special for their birthday. There's usually speeches and whatnot, messages being put out. Sometimes, if there's, if you're in a training cycle and not in a deployment cycle, you may have, sometimes we've had intramural sports tournaments around that time and whatnot. Some organizations, large organizations, when I was in the 1st Infantry Division, the Victory Division at Fort Riley, Kansas, every year they had Victory Week, which was a celebration of the division, its history, and it usually fell in the middle of June, so it would encompass the Army birthday. And there was intramural competitions that units would participate in, and all sorts of events, some parades and whatnot. The Fort Riley, Kansas is one of, I think, 3 Army posts that have a mounted color guard, where soldiers basically, they dress up in, Civil War and in Indian War era uniforms, but they're trained on horseback, and they do drills and they march in the parade. Usually it's either Fort Carson, Fort Riley, or Fort Hood's color guards that usually end up in the Rose Parade, which I believe you're familiar with, Mack.
Yes, I marched in the Rose Parade.
Mm-hmm. You may have stepped in horse poop from one of our fine mounted color guards.
Us yell eaters made sure not to step in any of that, because it required we required to step on each other's shoulders and do stunting. So we weren't going to be putting horse maneuver on our sweaters. That would have been awful.
There's also horses in the famed 3rd Infantry Regiment known as the Old Guard. If you've ever seen the changing of the guard at Arlington National Cemetery, those are members of the Old Guard. They also have horses that draw the funeral caissons with the caskets that get buried in Arlington. So those sorts of things. Anyway, you know, the Army has its celebrations, the Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Air Force, they all do as well. The Marine Corps always has what they call the Marine Corps birthday ball. And I had the good fortune one year to go to a Marine Corps birthday ball. And it was really cool. I was actually overseas in Saudi Arabia, and me and my unit of 8-10 people, we were invited to go. And the Marine detachment, because there's always Marines guarding embassies and consulates, so the Marines there invited, there was a couple of small little advisory units that we were part of. There's like 3 of them in the area, and we all got invites, and like only half of my team went, but it was cool. It was the guys I was actually closest to, and it was a lot of fun. You're there, you're in your dress uniforms, and there's a guy in his Navy dress whites, and the Marines are lining the way as you come in, and it's just a very nice celebration. But, and that's the Marine Corps birthday ball. The Army typically, we never, not that, I don't know if there has ever not been one, or ever been one, but, I know in most of the units I was in, there wasn't one. Kind of feel like we missed out a little on that one. But, everybody should have their own thing. So it is, but it is with great pride that I celebrate this year's 250th anniversary of the United States Army. It is, of course, a huge part of my life. It is not something that we all know that I can truly separate from myself. And that is what it is, right? That was my dream job. When you hear athletes who, when they have to retire, injury, or when they just are ready to hang it up, like, I got to live my dream. That's what I got to say when I gave my retirement speech. I did get to live my dream. And it wasn't easy, and at times it's still not, to move from there. This is a great meme. Happy birthday, Dad, from your son, the U.S. Air Force. Because for those people who don't know, the United States Air Force, when it was founded, was initially the U.S. Army Air Corps. So, all those, a lot of those aerial fights over Europe, almost all of the air forces in Europe were almost all Army. In the Pacific, you had a lot more Marine and Navy aviation. But, as you started hopping, deeper and deeper into Europe, you had less and less naval support. So it was it was fantastic, man. And I always enjoy this meme. It's funny. Happy birthday, Dad. Yes. In 1947, the Air Force split off and became its own independent branch. But there's an old saying in the Army: we have more aircraft than the Air Force and more boats than the Navy. Technically, it's true, because we have small boats and stuff like that. The Navy has actual ships. Don't ever say, don't ever boat. But yeah, but the U.S. Army has numerous helicopters. There's a limited fixed wing, aka planes. The Air Force kind of made that deal in the divorce. Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
Real quick.
Sure.
If the Air Force is the offspring of the U.S. Army, does that make the Space Force the grandchild of the U.S. Army?
Yes, it does. It does. That is exactly what it means.
All right. That's all I got to say. So
And that's all I've got to say about that.
Oh, yeah, that's a little mix up right there. That's a powerful juxtaposition there, sir. So,
hey, Forrest Gump was a U.S. Army non-commissioned officer.
We're dealing with
Medal of Honor recipient.
We're dealing with some crappy internet tonight, folks. I'm sorry. Hopefully it'll get better as time goes by. Anyway, DT, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
I was just mentioning that Forrest Gump was, of course, a U.S. Army veteran.
Yes. Medal of Honor recipient.
Yes,
which he was wearing when he gave the speech unwittingly in front of the Lincoln Memorial.
Well, most of his speech got cut off anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what made it powerful. Well, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, my time in the Army was always, it wasn't easy at times, I mean, it was as hard as it was. And what I tell people is it's hard, but it's worth it. That's what I can say. And for me, it was a very special time. And I understand. And I am not somebody who's willing to sugarcoat the bullshit and the heartache and the bureaucracy that comes with it. I know at times, the U.S. Army hasn't always been used in the best way it possibly can be.
This is
that one. Yeah.
For those who are not watching our feed, this is Grogu. What kind
he's wearing U.S. Army. He's wearing a U.S. Army PT gear.
There you go.
That is the sweat. That's the outer sweatsuit layer. It's it's a windbreaker and windbreaker pants that you wear over t-shirt and shorts. And I was wearing my PT shirt, the Army Physical Fitness uniform. So somebody must have. You can go in. Into like a U.S. Army on an Army base and go to a PX, a post expo, or the clothing and sales, and you'll find kids' versions of uniforms, and sometimes you might find a stuffed teddy bear wearing versions of uniforms. So this one looks like it was a large stuffed teddy bear that was stripped of its uniform and put on Grogu, and my kid about peed herself with laughter when she saw it. When that, because this picture's like 5 years old, so it's funny too, because there is a picture somewhere. I did buy my kid when she was about 9 or so her own version of the PT uniform. You could buy kids versions, and so there's a picture of us side by side wearing them. And looks like he's out at PT, and there's people doing at the pull-up bars.
Notice that with red shoes. One of them is not at the pull-up bars.
Nope.
But yeah, there's that.
Yeah, they used to be more restrictive on the kind of shoes and stuff you used to be able to wear, but
yeah, what's that about, man? Like,
they wanted it to be more uniform. It could only be like white, gray, or black, and they allowed.
I agree with the more uniform idea. Like,
but the problem is trying to. You go to a running store now, you can barely find a solo colored running shoe, especially a good running shoe. So they've made a little more allowances for that, mostly because they want you to be out there running, and if you tear up your feet, it's almost like you're damaging government property. So
that's true. Okay. It's funny. You'd think that in the 80s, we would have seen a bunch of neon colored shoes back then, but it's only in the last 15 years or so we're seeing really wackadoodle colors on exercise shoes in some form or another.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard not to buy those. I've gone into, sporting goods stores and like, do you have anything that's not so flashy?
Yeah, like anything.
And this
navy,
is since I
please?
retired.
Navy blue, I mean, not navy. Sorry.
It's fine. Navy blue's a good color.
It is a good color, but I remember in high school there was an assignment of put together your ideal store, and then a guy I was sitting next to, he was like, I'm gonna make a man store. And, this is right when the man show came out and everything. One of his rules was, at the man store, the only colors that are acceptable on men's clothing to be sold are black, navy blue, hunter green, and gray. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. That fits.
I'm generally okay with that too.
Yeah.
Mostly because I'm more prone to wearing mostly solid colors, and I'm not a what you would call a flashy dresser.
No, no. My wife, she gets me solid, monocolor t-shirts. That's all I want. I don't want to be a walking billboard or anything unless it's
I'm
like
not
the 4th
opposed
of July
to
or something.
I'm not opposed to a nicely, crosshatch pattern, like the small ones and small pinstripes, but I'm not the flashiest of dressers, and that suits me just fine.
You know who was? These guys.
Well, yeah, that's a clip from the great movie Gettysburg, but of course that's about the Battle of Gettysburg, the turning point of the Civil War. Excellent
Is that Carrie
performance.
Elwes?
No, that's Jeff Daniels.
Oh man,
he was fantastic in this. He was one of the main leads, and that is.
This is before his breakout role in Dumb and Dumber, right?
Right around the same time, actually.
Yeah.
He went from this to Dumb and Dumber the following year, so that's kind of wild. And that is Kevin Conway, I think, who actually is famous to Star Trek fans as Kahless.
Was it not Birthright? Shoot,
no.
What is it? It was a season 6 episode.
Yes.
That was the episode where Patrick Stewart was hosting SNL.
Yes, Kevin Conway.
Kevin Conway.
Kevin Conway, yes.
What's a Kevin Conway? About 180 pounds.
Yes.
You know what reference that
Hilarious.
is?
Yes.
From The Simpsons.
Yes, the Tim Conway gag.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You got it. You're not happy. Fine. What else is new?
No, it was good.
Okay.
I'm not arguing against it. It was good. Yeah, so Rightful Heir. That was the episode.
That's what it was. Yep. Okay.
And these are some excellent
what are we looking at?
Uniforms. It's another meme, but it's uniforms. So they're actually missing a uniform in there, the olive drab from like the late 50s through the early 80s, the Vietnam range. But they have a World War II Korea era drab uniform and it's Great Grumpa. And then they have the old battle dress uniform that came out in the 80s and was the first uniform I ever wore, and it went into the early 2000s, and that's Gruntpa. Then they have the ACUs, which was followed. It was supposed to be this hybrid uniform that could help you blend in both. It was digital camo too, but it was supposed to help you blend into both woodland and desert environments, and you could blend into neither. So it was this gray uniform. The only time you could really blend in was when it got really dirty.
Yeah. Of course.
And the problem is, the earliest versions of these would sun bleach real bad, and so we went through a few iterations.
Real bad.
My unit was one of the first to be issued those for deployment. So we were some of the first ones in theater to wear this.
You were the experimental wing, weren't you?
Kinda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I wore that uniform from 2005 until 2016. And then for the last 5 years of my career is this one called Baby Grunt, which is the OCP. It's the current U.S. Army tactical uniform, which is mostly greens, tans, and browns. It's not dissimilar to the uniform that they developed for Afghanistan. And they're both kind of harken back to the battle dress uniform, the woodland camouflage version, only they removed black because they realized black doesn't really occur very commonly in nature. So they figured this pattern would help break out the outline more. And it was nice to be back in a uniform that looked functional. Also, those latter two uniforms, the ACU and the OCP, were uniforms that were supposed to be wash and wear. The previous iterations, like you basically had to have field uniforms, which you could get dirty, and then you had ones that you would have on base, which you had to starch the shit out of, and they'd be all crisp and everything, and your report to work looking crisp. And either if you were getting starched, you had to iron, and you had to shine the boots. And then the later uniforms ended up with the suede boots, which were good, the tan suede boots. And then we went to a more brownish suede boot, which I very much enjoyed. They were more comfortable. They were more flexible, and you didn't have to spend hours shining them. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't some discipline instilled by having to shine your boots and show up looking, and getting your uniforms all starched and whatnot. But when you starch the battle dress uniform, it made it less effective as a field uniform. And of course, obviously, you then would have to have, and you still end up having to, like, your soldiers always had field boots. These are the ones that I get grungy, and these are the ones I look good when I have to go to the office. So
right.
We always ended up, you never just had one uniform. You always had like 4 or 5 of them, maybe more, especially
one would hope.
You start rotating, ones that are kind of wearing into, getting a little worn into your field uniforms, and then you get new ones to wear in the office and stuff. But it is kind of funny. It harkens back to the eras of uniforms, and I've worn 3 of them. So that's kind of fun. Ironically enough, the what you might call the semi-formal uniform, not the full dress uniform, but we've returned to what is known as pinks and greens for our Class A uniform, aka our you would call it your business uniform, like when you would go to testify in front of Congress or certain ceremonies and whatnot, or like what the recruiters are wearing. These we used to have a green uniform, and I had that for about a decade.
Sorry,
I don't believe I have the old Class A green uniform. It was kind of like a green business suit. Wasn't the best looking uniform, wasn't the most comfortable looking uniform, but it was recognizable.
Was it? Forgive me. I have to ask for the uninitiated, and also everyone. Just FYI, this is driving me nuts. I know we're a little optically more inclined right now with what we're talking about. So take a look. If you're listening to us, go to YouTube, go to Spotify, or go to Rumble. We're on any one of those, and you can come right back to this. It's minute 39 right now. So just FYI. Now my question,
sure.
DT, the green uniform that you're talking about, like, would Oliver North have worn that during his congressional testimony?
Well, he was a Marine, so he was wearing their version of it.
See, now for the uninitiated, I was just talking on behalf of the uninitiated. I knew that. But I knew that. So I'm just saying, So he wouldn't have.
Well, he wouldn't have.
Right. Okay, that's cool. What about Colin Powell?
He would have worn that uniform.
He would have worn that uniform.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah. See, now I knew that too.
You know, I could go ahead and yeah, of course you did.
Yeah, I totally did.
You're
the camera's not on me right now.
Friend.
The camera's not on me right now, but I'm actually embarrassed right now. So embarrassed.
Yeah, well, it's fine. It's fine. And you know what? Because I'm a generous dude, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna share a screen and I'm gonna show here. This is a clip from an article for those of you who can see it. I wore this uniform from 2003 until about 2011, maybe 12.
I remember when the Black Beret was introduced in 2001.
The Black Beret used to be the headgear of the Army Rangers, an elite light infantry assault force, right? That you have to go through separate schools for. You can rotate in and out of those particular units. But then the chief of staff of the Army, who's the head of the, who's the senior most officer in the United States Army, decided he wanted to, revamp the morale and give everybody something, to try to be proud of. And then he's like, all right, you're going to have the Black Berets, and the Rangers, well, you guys can have a tan beret. And they're like, tan beret? And they're like, fine. So they've had the tan beret. The Black Beret has mostly been phased out as a service headgear. I think soldiers still get them, but they only wear for certain occasions. They used to be, let's go stand outside in the sun wearing those. But they started kicking them back to just wearing them with certain more formal uniforms. But this one was phased out, and we went to, like I said, what is called the pinks and greens, which was which is basically the World War II. Well, I'm coming to it.
I got you.
Am I still sharing?
No, you removed your other one. It's just us talking circles right now.
Ah, excellent. Well, in that case, Class A uniform. If you can picture like a Dwight Eisenhower or somebody from the United States Army, circa World War II. Ironically enough, this is kind of funny. God damn it! Don't you hate it when the ads just like don't go away?
Oh, I know. They're insipid.
Yeah. So I'm going to share again.
And
this is a uniform I did not get a chance to wear. When they got rid of the greens back in 2010 or 2012, they took our dress blue uniforms and said, here's a couple of different features, and then we'll just make it, if you wear a straight tie and this different type of white undershirt, it's a duty uniform. And if you change out and you have like a dress shirt underneath and a bow tie, and you can, in a different headgear, then it's your dress blues, which is your formal, dress uniform. And which was fine because I liked the blue, and it was very reminiscent of, Civil War era uniforms, and it's a good looking dress uniform. But then they're like, yeah, well, we need something a little bit more that needs to differentiate. And they dropped this. These are recruiting command soldiers. In fact, this commanding general of recruiting at the time, I've met him. And this is all the way back in 2020. He was the commanding general in recruiting command when I left ironically, early 2020. And his headquarters was the recruiting headquarters is Fort Knox, Kentucky, and that's where I was at. But these other people clearly must be from the New England Army Recruiting Battalion, as they're at Fenway Park. So,
Yes.
But yeah, as you can see, it's very reminiscent of World War II era uniforms. There's a few more modern tweaks to them, but it's a sharp looking uniform. They gave it to recruiters first to kind of drum up the uniform, and people are, it's a good looking uniform, but I left service before I had to spend that money. There was no point in me wearing it. In fact, I had no opportunity to wear it, really. So there was no point in me buying something I might have only worn once before I retired. So it hadn't yet reached out the wear date. That being said, I can tell you, and I love this uniform. This is the dress blue. This is what a version of it. This is clearly as I mentioned, the old guard, and these are the guys who guard Arlington National Cemetery.
Oh yeah,
so my dress blues. Yeah, typically, like I never wore my actual medals on the uniform. I did wear my ribbons, which I was authorized to do, of course. We didn't wear the belt or anything like that. This is specialized, but that's the dress blue uniform, and it's a sharp looking uniform. And I always liked mine when I was wearing my cavalry Stetson, which is always pretty sweet looking. But the uniforms of the U.S. Army, you can see its influence. They're U.S. military uniforms. You can see it influence on TV and movies. Especially when you start looking at times at Star Trek uniforms. Like when they went to the movies, it was much more militaristic, and the high collars of the movie uniforms and whatnot, they started to look reminiscent of U.S. and British military dress type uniforms. Even the motion picture, they had the little shoulder straps in the motion picture on their shoulders, which was kind of interesting influence there.
Of Star
and
Trek?
Of course, of Star Trek, yeah.
Well, I
and
think we do have to take a sci-fi turn at some point pretty soon.
Right.
Let's see.
Oh no, I've got you too, my friend.
You got me?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do. These well, at least I did. Yeah. So we've got a little sci-fi here. I'm going to show you another one here. You can't tell me that this Mako uniform from Enterprise doesn't look kind of similar to how we would have, U.S. Army tactical personnel dressed.
Speaking of the motion picture, as you can see here, I always liked the Admiral uniform in this with
movie. The green. Yeah, I liked Kirk's uniform. It was a good looking uniform.
Was it green? I thought it was gray.
Yeah. Or it was like a greenish gray.
Interesting. I liked the cut of it. I thought it was it's the same kind of cut as the other uniforms, right? But I don't know, the color scheme makes it seem less pajama-y. If that makes sense. Because everyone else looks like they're wearing a pair of pajamas.
Right. Kind of.
Yeah. All right, I'll remove this. What was the one you wanted to share?
I sent you one. I believe it's of me wearing tactical gear.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yes. You did. I will get right to that. Do. And here we are.
Yep.
Is that it?
That was one. That's me in Baghdad in 2000. That's me in Baghdad in 2006. As you can see at that point,
the swords give it away.
Those are the famed cross sabers. That was Saddam's parade route. Real narcissist there. If you look at the uniform, that's the ACU at the time. I'm wearing the tactical vest. The IBA is, I can't remember what the acronym stood for, but it's basically a tactical vest with Kevlar plates in it that clearly matches my uniform. It has pouches on it. I have a drop leg holster for my pistol. I wasn't carrying a rifle at this time, and of course, gloves, eye protection, Kevlar helmet.
What time of year was this?
Tactical. April, maybe.
Okay, so only just the other side of the oven.
It was getting into the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Skip forward another one.
Okay.
If you would, please, amigo. So this is a slight hybrid of uniforms. I'm wearing a Spall vest, which is basically it's just Kevlar with no plates. It's designed to stop like debris on the inside of your tank or Bradley if like screws start flying out when.
Oh, didn't think about it like that, but yeah, that makes sense.
During combat operations, of course.
Of course,
I'm wearing a Kevlar reinforced, headset.
What about the sunglasses? Are they safety glasses?
Yes, those are ballistic eyewear.
Thank you, ballistic eyewear.
I also had prescription inserts for my glasses, so I could actually see a long ways there. But that was me during training in my Bradley fighting vehicle. That was somewhere in 2016, I would say, and I was wearing they were a tactical shirt. They didn't have the full blouse, so rather than wearing the undershirt and blouse combo, this was a tactical shirt that had like your insignia and your name and your rank on your sleeve. It was designed to be more comfortable under your body armor. So it was it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And this is the OCP in Afghanistan. Clearly you see, and that's 2017. So
it was like the only time you were in Afghanistan, right?
It was, yes. But this is clearly a decade after the picture in Iraq, and you can see the uniform has changed, the vest has changed. The vest was more form-fitting, and so it held to your body better, wasn't as bulky, so soldiers were able to be more maneuverable and flexible in combat. It also came apart easier in the event of any sort of emergency. And this was actually a next generation Kevlar as well. It was a lighter material. It wasn't quite as bulky either. So these, the evolution of the uniform. And then you go ahead and you just drop here, and I'll go ahead and share this. But going back to the picture of the Mako here, you can see clear influences. It's a digital camouflage.
Oh, sorry.
Like the Army. You seeing what I'm showing?
I see it. I'm trying to get to it. It's just not letting me for some reason. Oh, I got to stop sharing. Apologies.
Yep. It's all good.
There we go. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
It's a digital camo. It is a little more form fitting than our uniforms. The reason why our uniforms are a little generally bulkier is it's to help break up the outline of the human body a little too. But these are a little more snug. Clearly looks like he's got some sort of riot baton in addition to his rifle. Clearly they're not wearing helmets or eye protection, probably because it's a TV and they want you to see the actors' faces, even though this guy's just an extra with a gun.
Right.
But they do have sleeve unit patches with pretty cool. The Mako Shark is a pretty good unit uniform. That's clearly a name tag there, so he's it looks like it might be. So it looks like it might be influenced by our influenced by some of our more modern military uniforms. And this is like 2007, so this is right around the time that I was in Iraq, and we had our uniforms in. And I'm gonna, pull. You see in this. Well, this is not U.S. military. Did my change come up?
Your change?
The change of picture. All right.
No.
So I'm
removing yours now.
Yep. Stop screen. I'm going to present. You saw that one file, so I'm going to go ahead and show you this next one. This is, remember I said tactical shirt? It's actually called a combat shirt. As you can see,
okay.
And this is now the probably 2017, 20. This is a current uniform. You see the shirt is you've got your flag here. That's his pistol. That's his vest. But you can see similarities to, what Enterprise was working on. So I always found this, it was kind of neat. That's one of the reasons why I enjoyed the Mako so much, is they clearly had some influence of more modern military uniforms, rather than Starfleet security beaming down in a bright red shirt or even a bright yellow shirt, at least until the Dominion War, or even Deep Space Nine and Voyager, but they still had the bright color on their shoulders. By the time you get to the Dominion War era uniform, it's like black body, gray top, and just your turtleneck is the color that you can see, and maybe on your armband. But there's you finally at times see Star Trek kind of pull their crap together from time to time. There was the combat uniform that you saw in episodes of Deep Space Nine, like Nor the Battle Strong, which was kind of a bulky padded uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, and I'm gonna drop this picture in right here, if it will actually pop up. Yeah, here we are. Share screen. And this was the previous one you first see in Deep Space Nine, the bulky, kind of hardier outer uniform with just a stripe across the middle, right?
Yeah,
so that was this is it's all tore up, but this is a better, picture. There you can see it a little more tactical. And even here, see, this is a Starfleet security now, and look at how dirty that yellow stripe is too. So
what
in the
yellow
mud,
stripe? Like
yeah, kind of. You can see it a little, but
yeah,
clearly you get to see all sorts of interesting combat, uniforms now that are a bit more based in reality, which I appreciate. At least that's one thing that I appreciate about Stargate, was that their uniforms were at least based in reality. If they weren't 100% current era uniforms, they had to spice it up for TV, but they looked practical for the time period, right?
Yep.
And they were Air Force, so they're uniformed a little bit differently than we are anyway. But you see, the influence of tactical uniforms in many sci-fi nowadays. in Star Wars, I mean, one of my favorite uniforms was, and again, this is me from being the military guy I am, but the Rebel strike team on Endor. You can see that in addition to, they have helmets to protect themselves. They were camouflaged with actual camo patterns. And if you notice, most of them were wearing like cloaks or like ponchos. Again, helps break up the outline of a humanoid body, right?
Right.
And at least these guys kind of look, they're a little bunched up and whatnot. I know they're trying to be stealthy, but at least, they're crouched down and whatnot in tactical positions. That was the good thing about that Mako. He was at least in a fighting stance. Everything like Starfleet is very open stances, which makes you a huge target, But, these
Sorry,
are the
my
things
dog
that
is doing something he's not supposed to be doing. I was
dog
listening.
on a rampage. I
get you. Sorry,
but
sorry for the dead air, everyone.
That's okay. Me, I also like the classic uniforms from the history of the U.S. Army. I'm not going to say I would really like to have worn a Revolutionary era uniform with the tri-corner hat and the knee breeches and whatnot. And clearly the blue uniforms of the U.S. Army that was generally standard from, probably about around the time of the War of 1812, probably a little before, all the way until, the start of the war with the Philippines at the turn of at the start of the 20th century. We were still wearing blue. Not the most tactical looking uniform.
No.
That being said, many of these guys, like the militia, like these are supposed to be the guys of, in Lexington Green. And while they may not have looked 100% like each other, this was a militia company that had been drilling together. You can see that there is a look of determination and clearly some semblance of order here. And I think this is supposed to be Lexington Green, but that was the uniform of the time. You skip ahead a generation plus to the War of 1812 and you start seeing, big tall hats, which were kind of prevalent at the time. You can skip forward to some of the next pictures, my friend.
Let's see this one.
Well, that would be Washington at Valley Forge, of course, and these are actual Continental Army that did have some blue. These were what became the basis of the regular army, not just the state militias or the colonial militias that were called up. These were the guys who eventually became the backbone of the regular army. They were uniformed. They had training coming in, and you started to see more and more of a regular force that continued to fight through the later part of the revolution. And of course, you may progress, my friend. I did throw a few out there. I kind of got carried away early, so some of these might be front loaded.
I'm just going through all the tabs that I opened. So
this is the Battle of New Orleans, and that's clearly Andrew Jackson. But look at the uniforms of his soldiers fighting there. Now, of course, the Battle of New Orleans had a very interesting mixed group, and the battle actually fought a month after the treaty was signed. But of course, it takes forever for notification to get across the Atlantic, which is where the treaty was signed. So the British attacked New Orleans, and Andrew Jackson cobbled together some of his regular forces, militias and volunteers, including like Cajun and Creole militias out of New Orleans, which were mixed race. So there was African Americans and Cajuns and Creole and Spanish and French fighting in there, in militia, and members of Jean Lafitte's pirate crew who were very valuable firing cannon. So take that as you will. It was kind of an interesting group. The Battle of New Orleans is very fascinating to study.
Yeah.
This, then you skip ahead another 30 years, is the Mexican-American War. And this looks a bit like the U.S. Army storming either the ramparts of Chapultepec Castle outside Mexico City. It was one of the last defenses of Mexico City, or its breaches of Mexico City's defense itself. But now and the uniforms were blue. These gray might have been volunteer units. You can see a mixture of some blue, like with the flag bearer here, but they had this almost proto cap that we kind of wear now, that bus driver cap that you saw the guy wearing the dress blue uniform with the sword in front. They're kind of similar, the duty hats of the time. But yeah, this was the war with Mexico, which of course gained us full control of Texas, the Southwest, and California. You skip forward another generation.
Why aren't you a history teacher? I'm just saying. I mean, maybe you should get a teaching credential and use this knowledge. Bless America's next generation with this knowledge that sits here ready to go, sir.
I do try. I do my best to impart my wisdom where possible.
Paid for it.
Possibly.
I don't know. If I was going to be a teacher, my wife always said that I should be a history teacher. So I'm like, oh, you're right, and I'm not, but
Yeah. And of course, these are kind of the interwar year uniforms. You can see the blue. You see the cap and whatnot. But in the U.S. Army wore variations of this uniform until just before the Civil War, when it started changing a little bit more. Some French-inspired, the forage caps and the kepi, and getting rid of these old service caps. And of course, you saw the pictures of the two actors from Gettysburg wearing a general approximation of a Union Army volunteer uniform. Of course, if you skip ahead to the next one, you'll see others. Ooh, Armchair General, one of my favorites. And this, of course, I think might be Spotsylvania, but this is regular U.S. Army. You can tell by the flag. That's a infantry flag of a regular Army unit charging over Confederate breastworks. And of course, the famous Union blue uniforms with a bayonet charge and the 33-star flag at the time. So, and of course, I'm only pointing out the Union uniforms because those are the uniforms of the United States Army.
Yes. Oh, I opened this one up twice. Okay, here's the next one. Oh, this is a special one. Explain this one.
So these are the volunteers of the Irish Brigade. You can see their flag here, with the harp and the green, flourishes of the unit of the regimental flag. This is the brigade flag. And this is, I want to say, the Irish Brigade, maybe at Antietam. And that's Thomas Marr, their Irish revolutionary who was banished from Ireland to Australia, escaped Australia, came to the U.S. as a huge celebrity in the Irish community, and he raised one of the most legendary units of the U.S. Civil War. Hard-fighting units of Irish immigrants and Irish Americans from New York, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, mostly.
That's a good one. I like the flag that they have and everything. And
also, I have that flag somewhere.
Yeah, you do. And I remember you showing me that before, and that was cool.
Yep.
Let's see. Here we go. This one.
And here are the Buffalo Soldiers. These are the regular army in the Indian Wars, the American Indian Wars. After the Civil War, the Union Army, the U.S. Army shrunk, still larger than it was before the Civil War, but it shrunk, and they expanded the regular army to several more infantry and cavalry units, including 2 infantry and 2 cavalry units that were all made of African American soldiers, the first regular army African American soldiers at the time. And these are soldiers known as Buffalo Soldiers, which was an honored name given to them by their Native American foes. I can't tell if this is the 9th or 10th Cavalry, which were famous. But I did serve as an officer in the 10th Cavalry, and that picture of me standing in Baghdad with the crossed sabers, I was a officer in the 10th Armored Cavalry Squadron, a squadron, 10th Cavalry Regiment. And proud lineage, and our unit icon was a buffalo on our unit crest. So the Buffalo Soldiers of the 10th Cavalry also gained a lot of fame. If you'll skip ahead to the next one.
Okay. Why am I frozen? Hold on. What's going on?
Oh, no.
No, it's not that frozen. Not yet, anyway.
Well, actually, this is a very interesting picture. I pulled this out. This is the latter part of the 19th century. U.S. Army cavalry units during the late 1880s and 1890s, once the Indian Wars were basically over, they began to patrol Yellowstone, the area that became Yellowstone Park. And the bigger, and we don't have the bigger picture, but the full picture of this is this cavalry patrol coming upon poachers carving up a buffalo's carcass, which by that point, the army and everybody had basically hunted the buffalo to almost extinction. And there was a small herd in Yellowstone, which by this time the army actually kind of became the first park rangers out there and patrolled the national parks. And this is actually a famous painting of U.S. cavalry busting up some poachers.
It's interesting because it's funny how the cavalry had to double as part of national park enforcement. I mean, they made these parks and they had no infrastructure on how to enforce these the rules at these parks and everything. So,
in fact, that's the reason why park rangers wear campaign hats.
That makes sense. Sense. So
the Smokey the Bear hat is based on the U.S. Army campaign hat, which was generally worn by cavalry in the latter half of the 19th and early part of the 20th centuries, and also became famous in World War I. If you want to skip forward a little, I always like this picture. Really nice one. Big fan.
There we are.
Nope. Well, we skipped 2 wars.
Oh, sorry. Those are the ones that I got.
I'll
have to look.
It's all good.
I'll double check.
The 10th Cavalry charged up San Juan Hill in Cuba alongside Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders, and they were part of the dismounted cavalry attack that took Kettle and then San Juan Hill. And a young man at the time by the name of John Pershing, or as he was called, Black Jack, because he served with the African American units and was proud of it. So he took the name as a compliment. Black Jack Pershing became the commanding general of the United States Army Forces as they pursued Pancho Villa in Mexico in the 19-teens. And then led the U.S. Army Expeditionary Force to France in World War I, and was part of the U.S. Army's reinforcement of Britain and France and Italy in their fight against Germany and Austria, and leading to the Allies' victory in World War I. Pictured here, of course, is Dwight Eisenhower talking to members of the 101st Airborne. Looks like as they were getting ready to, I believe this picture is just, in the days leading up to D-Day. You can see they painted their, some of them have painted their faces with black grease paint, which was to help them, kind of flatten the shine on people's faces and also help them blend in because they were going to do night jumps. That was part of the plan for Operation Overlord.
Right.
June 6, 1944, they airdropped 2 U.S. Army airborne divisions, the 101st and the 82nd, along with the British 1st Airborne. And they jumped into Nazi-occupied France, and they were supposed to start cutting lines of communication and destroying depots and seizing towns and crossroads to enable, one, to tie up the Germans and to keep them chasing their tails while the main 100,000 plus soldiers started landing at, this 5 beaches: Gold, Sword, Juneau, Utah, and Omaha beaches. Mostly U.S., British, and Canadian forces. And that's Ike just before the big day. What else we got as far as?
I found what you were wanting.
Yes, this is a picture of Roosevelt and his Rough Riders charging up Kettle and San Juan Hill. They were supported on one flank by troops of the 10th Cavalry. It's a pretty good picture. It was a cavalry charge, but it was on foot, and Roosevelt was one of the few people riding, just so his men could track where he was. Roosevelt, a volunteer, actually was later awarded the Medal of Honor for this. His son, Theodore Roosevelt Jr., received the Medal of Honor for his role in the landings at D-Day.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
Yep.
My favorite president.
He is fascinating.
He really is just a wilder than wild and out of this earth character. That's for sure.
Yes. Yep. That's a picture of the Rough Riders atop San Juan Hill after the victory. There was when TNT was making all of those great westerns and war movies, in the 90s and early 2000s, they made a pretty good miniseries called The Rough Riders with Tom Berenger as Teddy Roosevelt. And it covers the formation of the Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War. It includes Sam Elliott, R. Lee Ermey, George Hamilton, and a few other notable faces out there. So pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating history we have with the Army and all our armed services, but specifically we're talking about the Army due to your history and everything. You got to live your dream, you got to live your experience.
Sure.
Like you said, it's not easy, but it's worth it. Wait, did you say it's worth it, or am I adding it? Was I adding it?
It's not easy, but it is worth it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Don't want to speak on your behalf.
This isn't a propaganda video. This isn't, this is just my commemoration. And, I want to salute the service that allowed me to meet my wife. My daughter was born on an Army base in the geographic center of the United States in a military hospital. Okay. She's lived most of her life while I was in the military. She was 11 when I retired. She's 14 now. So, put those two together. Excuse me. She was 10 when I retired, but still. I sent you a few actual photos to put up. You might find.
Oh, let me take a look. Sorry.
Sure, it's all good.
There we go. Got it.
You know,
we'll share this.
photos, memes. This was actually when I left the 10th Cavalry. As you can see, we were wearing our Stetsons, and I received my cavalry saber. I left this unit. I did a permanent change of station. That's PCS. That's when you move on to a next assignment. I went to career advancement school before I went to Army recruiting. But, you know, the Cav Stetson is one of my favorites. There's another picture because as we all know, I do have two Cav Stetsons in addition to another Stetson. That was me in charge of a cavalry troop at Fort Riley, Kansas. Note that I have a brown cavalry Stetson.
Yes.
The unit there, the commanding officer said we should be wearing brown because that's what they wore on the campaign in the 1870s. So we said, okay, sir. You may notice as well on my feet, I am wearing my gold combat spurs. I was awarded them because I went to war with a cavalry unit. If you pass it,
you are wearing spurs, aren't you? Look at that.
I am.
Can I zoom in? I don't think
you
I can.
Can a little. They're studs. They don't have the rondels, the spinny spikes, but you know, for in cavalry units for formal, you know, Fridays were always Stetson and spur days. You could put your Stetson, put your spurs on, and you could do them in the unit area. So I actually had a rack that had a Stetson holder and spur holders. I ended up getting a second pair of gold spurs that I would put on my dress uniform. And even when I wasn't technically authorized to wear them, the spurs were always on my dress shoes. And no one ever said shit about it. I wasn't always able to wear the Stetson at formal occasions. I did like wearing it though. As you can see, it kind of fits the DT Cav man.
Oh, there's a method to your name, isn't there?
Maybe just a little. But are these it? Is that them?
That's all I have. That's the end of the line right there. So,
well, as you can see, you know, the military was a huge part of my life, and you know, the Army was pretty good to me. I can tell you though that you know, there's all sorts of, you know, stereotypes and misconceptions about soldiers and whatnot. You know, at times during downtime, you know, guys did all sorts of, well, especially while deployed, did all sorts of different things. You know, at my second tour in Iraq, we had someone had built an RC racing course, a good size one too. So guys started building RC cars, and you know, some guys would be off duty and would go and race these cars on this track. Yet other guys, you know, I went up to a base because I had one of my subordinate units was detached doing some training. And I went to visit them when I went up to see my higher headquarters, and I went over to check on them. And, you know, somebody's like, oh yeah, there's tonight's Dungeons and Dragon night with the Dungeons and Dragons club. People were playing D&D downrange. People played cards, dominoes, watched movies, DVDs, you know. A lot of people, particularly in the later tours, would put a video game system in their footlocker that they would ship over. And I know I had a PS2 on 2 tours. And so, you know, played some video games. I played some Madden football. I did a lot of reading. Man.
That dates you, man.
The Iraq War dates me, dude.
I know. I forget that, that was back in the era of PS2 and PS3.
I told you I wore the battle dress uniform, which was phased out in 2007.
Right? I know. Yeah.
Okay.
We've seen some years. What can be said?
We have. But that's the funny thing about it too. Like, I remember on my first tour, I read a lot, and I was reading, read some Louis L'Amour, read some Robert B. Parker, read all the Dan Brown books, Da Vinci Code, and it was Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons at the time. Read those, but then I also had several Star Trek novels sent downrange.
Before we go that far, when you read, which order did you read the Dan Brown books? Da Vinci Code first or Angels and Demons first?
I was told to read Angels and Demons first because technically it did come first.
Right. I did that too. But I only bought Angels and Demons because the Da Vinci Code got really big real fast and everyone was talking about it. And I saw that it was that was a sequel to Angels and Demons. So I'm like, oh, I'll read this. That's cool. I really liked Angels and Demons. I thought it was a fascinating concept.
I actually liked it better than Da Vinci Code. And Da Vinci Code was a very good book, but I liked Angels and Demons better.
I actually found Da Vinci Code to be a bit of a disappointment because, number one, well, really, it was the same book as Angels and Demons.
A little.
just different nouns, basically. Same structure, same rushing. The lore was different, and that was interesting. But I found the structure of his books to be I read a separate book of his about a supercomputer issue. Same exact structure.
Yeah, those were some of his early books. When I was downrange in Iraq in that first tour, a friend of mine who's a naval officer, actually, she sent me a box. She sent me a couple boxes, actually. A longtime friend in college, classmate, and she sent me this box, and it had the 4 books that Dan Brown had written, which were Angels and Demons, Da Vinci Code, and these 2 paperbacks that had done it. And I didn't get to read them. I think I just got on to something else, but read Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code, and I read both of them. And I do think that there was one that was like a supercomputer, one that rings a bell now. So it was cool for me, though. I liked it. I enjoyed reading it. It was cool. And Angels and Demons struck me a little bit better, maybe because I kind of always enjoyed the inner workings of the Catholic Church from when I took Development of Western Civilization at a Catholic college, and we talked a lot about the early church and a lot of the scandals and the legends and all the stuff that just were so fascinating and juicy. So there that fascinated me. But then I ended up reading I had Star Trek novels sent in. I binge watched on this tour. I bought the DVD series and folks, these will ring bells because these are some short-lived series that are favorites of mine. Space Above and Beyond, Jack of All Trades, and Briscoe County Jr. I bought them on Amazon, had them shipped over to me. I had that first tour. I had a group of. Once I moved to a staff position, I worked with a few guys. One of whom was a Navy officer assigned to us because he had some technical knowledge. But this Navy guy and these 2 other Army officers and we got heavily into Battlestar Galactica. And the Navy guy had a buddy who downloaded all and burned a CD with all the webisodes before they started the occupation of Caprica. And then he sent a DVD with the first 2 or 3 episodes of that season. that had come on TV, and we would go over to this dude's room, and we would sit and we would watch these episodes of Battlestar Galactica. That's where I first found on a hard drive the fantastic web series Imps the Relentless.
What is that?
Imperial Military Stories.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're gonna make me find
with
that.
The intro by Optimus Prime.
Right. We've done this before.
Well, we've talked about it.
Imps the Relentless. Here we go.
Yeah. And I found a video of the very first robot chicken, one of the first robot chicken sketches. It was the Vader calls Palpatine after the Death Star blows up.
Oh my God, yes.
Go for Papa Palpatine.
Go.
What the hell's an aluminum falcon?
Yeah. I haven't even made a single payment on that yet.
Yeah. And
oh,
I also
gosh,
found
he's crying.
Yeah. That I found on this same hard drive. It was an episode of Firefly, which I had not seen because it kind of came out my senior year of college, and I was pretty busy getting ready for commission, and then the war in Iraq kicked off. So
senior year's a tough year to watch TV.
Yeah. And then that encouraged me to, when I get home, buy the series and the movie on DVD. So
right, that's what I did.
I've been hooked, and I've been a Nathan Fillion fan ever since.
Same since 07 though. I mean, Firefly came out in 02. Took me 5 years to find the damn show, 2 years to watch the movie, which I knew when it came out. And everything, it was out, and I thought it was neat that they got to finish the story by making a movie. That's always a heartwarming thing. When a creator gets to not necessarily go out on their terms, but at least to get their terms to go out as best as possible.
Yeah,
right?
You know what, and I think that's good. So many people just have these great things that don't finish. And like I said, man, I was the guy, I also went out and, on these tours and threw the football around, and I did a 5K on one once, and, would hit the gym and lift weights, and, in some less combat tours, and like my tours in Saudi, I would hit the pool or whatever. But, I was also content to, like, on my second tour in Iraq, somebody bought me the entire DVD series of Star Trek The Next Generation. So I started watching all of them. I binge watched the entire series of Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. And I was reading a ton of Star Trek books at the time, too. So, I mean, and I found kindred spirits who liked sci-fi or who liked, stupid comedies, or like, and people are crammed into somebody's room watching Anchorman or something, and that was the cool thing, right? And then as we watched this Imps the Relentless, we not only did we die laughing, but we all like, somebody's got to be a veteran in here when they start.
Let's do it.
And remember, this is from like 2006, maybe 2005. Yeah. And if you watch it, it still holds up. And this is just a teaser.
Yeah, this is only a minute 48.
It is the greatest military force the galaxy has ever known. With histories upheld by tradition, integrity, honor. They are revered by their allies, feared by their enemies, respected by
stormtroopers suiting up, by the way, everyone. You can't see it.
Yeah.
You know their origins. You know the legacy. And you think you know the story.
Okay, that's pretty badass, the sword.
But there's one you haven't heard. And it's told by those with the best damn job in the galaxy.
Imps. The Relentless.
Spring 2005.
05.
Yeah, man.
It's therelentless.com.
05. Holy. Holy. Okay. That was 20 years ago.
If you go back to the original Voltron cartoons that came over here in the 80s, that's the same level of gravitas Peter Cullen gives this intro, and I am so here for it.
Wait,
and the
Peter
funny
Cullen,
thing is, Optimus Prime.
Do a voiceover for Voltron?
Yeah, he was the narrator for the show.
Oh, interesting. This one?
Yeah.
Lilo and Stitch is a global phenomenon.
Oh, damn it. You son of a bitch. Damn you, Disney. You got me.
They always get you.
I want to make it very clear that we do not endorse the movie Lilo and Stitch in any way, shape, or form. Feel free to see it or not. Don't care. I liked it, though.
Oh, you've seen the reboot?
Yeah, it was actually pretty enjoyable. The ending, though, is a little the message is a little weird. In the first movie, it was all about keeping the family together, but in the end, Lilo actually gets sent off to foster care. But they have a portal gun, so Nani can see her whenever she wants, and she's in foster care with the next door neighbor, which is practically family. So I don't know. People are a little like, the second movie kind of just says, give your child to the state and live your dream. Like, yeah. Here it was like 30. Sorry about that.
So we've talked about how I met Peter Cullen, right?
Yep.
And we've also talked about how he came up with the voice of Optimus Prime. You've seen that video. You've heard the story.
Yes.
For those of you who don't remember, Peter Cullen's brother was a captain in the Marines in Vietnam. And he looked up to his older brother. And he was staying with his brother in California when he got, a chance to go audition for Optimus Prime. And he's like, I got this job. He's a truck. He's like, a truck? He's like, yeah, but it's like he's a hero truck. He's a leader. He's in charge of these group of heroes who are trying to protect the earth. And he said that and you can look at the video, the multiple videos, the reverence he has for his brother. But I guess his brother got kind of serious and said, be strong enough to be gentle. Don't be one of these Hollywood leaders who yell all the time. And that he took that to heart. And basically Optimus Prime is his impersonation of his brother. And he modeled that level of leadership and gravitas and personal, the approachableness and the nobility of Optimus Prime is what he felt his brother was imparting to him, which I always love that story.
Yeah, that's a good story.
And my very first Comic-Con was Boston Fan Expo in 2023. And I took my kid and I did an early iteration of Mako basically wearing an old Army uniform with some Mako patches and Star Trek communicator and crap, just because I was just trying to make it out of something I had around the house. And I always
have it. I think I have it. Keep going. Keep talking. Sorry.
It's not the one in the gray top. It's literally a camouflage uniform. Anyway,
no, I don't have that one. Sorry,
it's all
you're
good.
right. I have the gray top one.
Anyway,
at least I have that one on hand.
Yeah, and that's a good one. But you know, we had gone and we had met Tara Strong, and because my kid wanted to get a picture with her, and she was fine, and she's like, "Hi, come on in," and stands in the middle of the two of us. Thank you, and we move on. So it was in and out pretty quick. I'm standing. We're waiting to go see Peter Cullen, and I'm kind of geeking out because I'm a huge fan of his, and he's like 82 or 83, and like there's people ahead of us, with a little kid, like I don't know, 5, and he's got like a Transformers shirt on or something, or he had like a book or like a coloring book with Transformers or something like that. And Peter gives this big grin, and he kind of drops down on a knee, and he's like, "Hi, you're a Transformers fan. That's great," and brings the kid in. And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's a little bit more approachable." So we go up, and he's like, "Hi, welcome," and he sticks out his hand, shakes my hand. I'm like, so he's like, "Yeah," he's like, and I just leaned over and I said, "I just want you to know that I based my military leadership style off of what I learned watching, your performance as Optimus Prime. Part of it, I said he was a big influence on, what I believed a good leader should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is that nobility and that willingness to admit you're wrong, but also to sacrifice for the greater good and to take care of your people. You see that in Optimus Prime in a cartoon in the 80s. Okay.
Yes.
And he he looked like he was taken aback for a minute. He's like, "Oh my, thank you." And then he's like puts his arm around me and my kid and pulls us in, and he's got a big grin on his face. And Ron is like, I'm like, "Thank you so much." He's like, "No, thank you." Dude was awesome.
You made his day.
He made mine, to be honest with you.
Well,
he was just so
cool. It seems, yeah.
He was just so cool and humble and kind, and I didn't want to make it uncomfortable for him, but I wanted to let him know that he had an impact on me, and it was just he gave me an opening. If it was just, "Hey, come in, picture, go," I probably wouldn't have said anything, but because he gave me a quick opening, and that is like it sounds weird to say that, like a cartoon I watched when I was 5, 6 years old stuck with me long enough to and I freely admit, when DVDs start getting big in like the early 2000s, and you could then start buying TV shows, I started buying the original Transformers when I was like a young lieutenant, had a little disposable income. I'm like, "Oh shit, I love that show." I kind of want to see what it's like as an adult. And I watched it. I'm like, "God damn, Optimus Prime was a badass." I can understand why his dudes would follow him to the end. Yeah, man, this dude gets it. Yep. Optimus Prime fucking gets it, man. And I'm not perfect, and I'm more hot-headed than Optimus Prime is. I'm a little more like movie Optimus Prime, like Michael Bay movie Optimus Prime was a little more, I would say, aggressive. Still the same voice though, which is great.
Yeah,
But yeah, man. I mean, I'm not kidding. Like that was like the first leader I ever remember seeing as a kid, right? I mean, He-Man, yeah, but like Prime was like a leader of like a unit. He-Man was kind of more like a superhero, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So he also had a secret identity. I mean, technically the Transformers did too when they converted into cars and parked in the parking lot. But
yeah, and you actually have a secret identity, so
I do. Hope you guys don't mind our trip now. This is a big deal, and I hope you don't mind. But, something I give so much of my life to, including years of U.S. Army is a big chunk of who helped me mold who I am now. It's how I was fortunate to meet my wonderful wife, have my daughter, take care of my family, and allowed me to purchase this home I live in now. And those Sci-Fi Guy fans, please remember, Mack and I started this podcast while I was still on active duty. My first meetings were at Fort Knox, Kentucky, in my room, while I was still a serving member of the United States Army.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, that's true.
Literally, like there was a couple of times I recorded with you the first couple, and like I was in uniform the next day going to the office.
Okay? Yeah.
So the military, and this comes all the way back from both of my grandfathers who served in the military and some other extended family members. But, both my grandfathers had a big influence on me, as many do. And they were both proudly served. One served in the Pacific as a doctor during World War II. My other grandfather was younger, didn't go to, was too young for World War II, didn't join the National Guard here, didn't get sent to Korea, but did serve close to 30 years in the National Guard. I remember when he retired, I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And he was, I remember seeing him in his dress uniform, and, like 18 years later, I'm wearing the same uniform. So it was a big deal for me, and it's special. And as much as I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, and of course we all know that the military, I tend to lean on the military side when it comes to sci-fi and fantasy and superheroes and whatnot. But that's as much a part of me as the military. And I just want to say to my brothers and sisters in the United States Army, past and present, thank you and happy birthday.
Couldn't have put it any better at all. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Army. Thank you for keeping us safe, and for all our servicemen and women out there making that ultimate sacrifice. Thank you very much. All right, then. That's it. That's the ultimate end, at least for tonight. So you guys keep dreaming. We'll keep working. I am P.S. McKay. Until the next time. So long, everybody.
And I am Major Retired DT Cavman. And come and join me on the high ground, where I have 250 U.S. Army birthday cake ready for all of you.
Those Sci-Fi Guys is an independent broadcast by Alpha Site Productions, produced by DT Cavman and P.S. McKay. Ocean by Music by Aiden under Creative Commons license. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow P.S. McKay on X at PS McKay or go to thosci-fi-guys.com for past episode information. You can now find us on Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook for a little bit of information here and there. But don't worry, you can still find us on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find them.